Your role is no longer necessary. Return your company access by Friday. The text message arrived at 3:17 a.m. Singapore time, its blue light illuminating my hotel room while I reviewed final contract points for tomorrow's signing. 6 years building the Asian network, 18 months convincing leadership this expansion was viable. 4 rounds of negotiations with distributors who only agreed to meet because of relationships I'd personally cultivated. All erased by 12 words, sent while I was literally on the other side of the world, hours away from securing what would be the biggest win in company history. I read it again, certain I'd misunderstood. The message remained unchanged on my screen, sent from Margot, the newly appointed Chief Strategy Officer, who'd joined 3 months ago. I checked the recipient list, just me. No courtesy copy to my team, no acknowledgement of what I was currently doing for the company. My hands trembled slightly as I placed my phone face down on the desk. Through the window, Singapore's financial district sparkled below, indifferent to my situation. The irony wasn't lost on me, being terminated while staying in a $700 per night hotel on the company dime, finalizing a deal that would open 5 major Asian markets to our products. I stood and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. The signs had been there for weeks. Margot asking unusually detailed questions about my distributor contacts, the new requirement to document my approach methodology for knowledge transfer purposes, junior team members suddenly included in strategic calls. They'd been planning this for months, waiting until I secured the deal, then discarding me before paying my commission on the $12 million agreement. A perfect corporate calculation. Take 6 years of my work, let me finalize the contract, then claim my position was no longer necessary. I picked up my phone and typed a single-word reply, understood. Then I did something they never expected. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story of corporate betrayal and what comes after, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps, and I promise the revenge that's coming is worth sticking around for. Drop a comment if you've ever been undervalued at work. I read them all. My name is Amara Lockwood, and until that text message, I was the global expansion director for a mid-sized American technology firm that produced specialized industrial sensors. I joined when the company had 0 international presence and single-handedly built distribution channels across Europe before setting my sights on Asia. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. I spoke 3 languages, understood cultural nuances that corporate leadership couldn't grasp, and had built genuine relationships with business leaders across multiple countries. My division had grown annual revenue by 24% for 3 consecutive years, but I wasn't part of the inner circle. I'd been hired before the current CEO, Pierce, took over and transformed our company culture from collaborative to cutthroat. Pierce brought his own people, like Margot, and they viewed veterans like me as obstacles rather than assets. I slept fitfully for 4 hours, then showered and dressed in my most impeccable suit. If this was to be my professional funeral, I would look flawless for it. The $12 million distribution agreement would have been my crowning achievement. Now, it would be my parting gift to the company that had decided I was disposable. At 9 a.m., I entered the gleaming headquarters of Eastward Distributors, the Singapore-based company that would serve as our primary Asian partner. The receptionist recognized me immediately. "Miss Lockwood, welcome back. Mr. Tan is expecting you." Kaiden Tan, the distribution head, greeted me warmly in the conference room. 6 months of relationship building had transformed our interactions from formal to friendly. "Amara, excellent to see you." He gestured to the tea service prepared on the side table. "I've arranged for the jasmine pearl tea you mentioned enjoying last time." "You have an incredible memory, Kaiden." I smiled genuinely despite the hollowness in my chest. "Thank you." He poured the tea with practiced movements. "We're excited to finalize our partnership today. Your understanding of our regional needs made this possible when other Western companies failed. Our respective legal teams had prepared everything. The contracts specified quality standards, delivery timelines, pricing structures, and territory exclusivity. It was clean, tight, and favorable to both parties after months of negotiation. But now, I saw it differently. As we reviewed the documents, a plan crystallized in my mind. Not sabotage. I was too professional for that, but protection. For myself and, in a way, for Kaiden too. "Before we sign, I said casually. There's one small adjustment I'd like to propose. Kaiden tilted his head slightly, wariness flickering across his expression. At this stage, everything has been approved by both sides. It's minor, I assured him. Just language clarifying the implementation timeline and relationship management. In international business, tiny details matter enormously. Trust is paramount. Relationships sustain everything, especially in Asian markets, where personal connections often trump institutional ones. I drafted a 3-sentence clause for page 17. It specified that the primary contact who negotiated the deal must personally oversee implementation for the first 6 months. If that person changed, either party could request a complete contract review with modified terms. This ensures consistency, I explained as Kaiden read the addition. You'll work with someone who understands your needs and has proven trustworthiness. He nodded slowly, the wariness dissolving. This is reasonable. It protects both our interests and honors the relationship we've built. Neither of us spoke the obvious truth. Corporations often push aside deal makers. Once contracts are signed, substituting implementation teams unfamiliar with the nuanced conversations and unwritten understandings that shaped the agreement. We added the clause, and our lawyers adjusted the documents. That afternoon, with ceremonial pens and company witnesses, we signed the agreement that would generate millions in revenue for years to come. Kaiden shook my hand last. I look forward to implementing this with you, Amara. Our success depends on partners who understand both business and culture. I maintained my professional smile. Absolutely. That night, I carefully packed for my return flight. I sent an email to my team with detailed handover notes, not because the company deserved it, but because my team members did. Then I opened my laptop and sent a single message to Kaiden's private email address. Kaiden, I value our professional relationship and believe in transparency. Please call me tomorrow at 2 p.m. your time. Something important has changed. On the 14-hour flight home, I didn't watch movies or work on presentations. Instead, I updated my resume, contacted 3 industry connections about potential opportunities, and strategized my exit interview. I would be gracious, professional, and memorable. When I landed, my phone exploded with notifications. 15 missed calls from headquarters, 7 urgent emails marked confidential, contract review, 3 text messages from Pierce himself. I smiled for the first time since receiving Margot's termination message. The storm had begun, and I was safely outside, watching it gather force. When I arrived at the office building, my company ID card didn't work at the security gate. The guard gave me a sympathetic look as he checked my name against a list. Sorry, Miss Lockwood. I need to issue you a visitor badge. A visitor badge. After 6 years of building their international division from nothing. Thanks, Daniel, I said, accepting the plastic clip-on. Daniel had worked security since before I joined the company. He'd seen executives come and go, watching their status change through simple exchanges like this one. They left your things with reception, he added quietly. Been seeing too much of that lately. The elevator ride to the 14th floor gave me time to compose myself. The doors opened to reveal Margot waiting in the reception area, her posture rigid, designer dress impeccable. At 42, she'd been recruited from a competitor 4 months ago, bringing an aggressive management style that valued metrics over people. Amara, she said, tone artificially warm. Thank you for coming in. We can speak in the side conference room. I glanced at the reception desk, where a cardboard box sat, my office contents already packed up. Let me get my things first. Of course. Her smile remained fixed. Pierce would like to join our conversation if you're amenable. I nodded. I would expect nothing less. The side conference room was strategically chosen, away from the main work areas where my former team might see me. Pierce was already seated, scrolling through his phone. He looked up with practiced concern when we entered. Amara, thank you for your understanding during this transition. Pierce Mason had taken over as CEO 18 months ago after our founder retired. In his mid-50s, with prematurely white hair that he leveraged as a distinguished trademark, he'd spent his career making troubled companies profitable, usually by aggressive cost-cutting, followed by a sale to larger entities. I sat across from them, placing my visitor badge prominently on the table. I understand perfectly. Margot slid a folder across the table. Your severance package is very generous. 6 months' salary plus your accrued vacation time. We're also extending health benefits through the end of the year. I didn't touch the folder. And my commission on the Asian distribution deal? They exchanged quick glances. Pierce cleared his throat. As you hadn't completely finalized the deal before your separation. I signed the contract yesterday, I interrupted. In Singapore, where you sent me. Yes, but given the timing of your departure notification, which you sent while I was literally signing the deal. Margot interjected smoothly. The restructuring decision was made last week. The timing was unfortunate. Unfortunate, I repeated. That's one word for it. Pierce leaned forward. Amara, we value your contributions. This is strictly a structural change, as we pivot toward a regional management model, rather than global directors. Nothing personal. I smiled. Of course not. Business is never personal. I finally opened the folder, skimming the severance agreement with its customary non-disparagement clauses. I notice my commission isn't mentioned here. We could discuss a partial recognition, Margot offered cautiously. That's not necessary, I said, closing the folder. I'm sure you'll want these. I removed a USB drive from my pocket. All my contacts, meeting notes, and relationship histories with the Asian distributors. 6 years of work. Their faces showed visible relief. This was going easier than they'd anticipated. Pierce took the drive. Thank you, this is very professional. One more thing. I placed a thick document on the table. You'll want to review this immediately. What is this? Margot asked, pulling it toward her. The signed distribution agreement. Pay particular attention to section 4.3 on page 17. As Margot flipped through the pages, I continued. By the way, I've already informed Kaiden Tan of my departure, as professional courtesy required. Pierce's face drained of color. You did what? He was understandably concerned, given the relationship continuity clause we added before signing. Margot found the page, her eyes widening as she read the addition. She showed it to Pierce, whose expression hardened. This wasn't in the approved contract draft, he said tightly. Minor implementation clarifications are standard in international agreements, I replied, especially in Asian markets where relationship continuity is culturally significant. He pushed back from the table. This is unacceptable. You had no authority. I had full authority as Global Expansion Director to finalize terms within the approved framework. This addition creates no new financial obligations. Margot read the clause again. This effectively makes you personally essential to the deal. Not me specifically, whoever negotiated the agreement. I stood, gathering my visitor badge and purse. Unfortunately, that person is no longer with the company. But I'm sure you'll work something out. Pierce's voice stopped me at the door. Amara, be reasonable. We can revisit your position. I turned back. My position is no longer necessary. Your words, not mine. As I walked to the elevator, my phone vibrated with a calendar alert. My scheduled call with Kaiden in 15 minutes. Perfect timing. I stopped by reception to collect my box of belongings. Inside was a framed photo of my team celebrating after closing our first European deal, awards I'd received for performance, and a jade plant I'd kept alive for years. The security guard helped me to my car. Good luck, Miss Lockwood, Daniel said, closing my trunk. Thank you, Daniel. You might want to update your resume soon. He raised an eyebrow. Just a feeling, I said. I drove to a nearby park, parked under a shady tree, and waited for Kaiden's call. When my phone rang exactly at the scheduled time, I answered with my usual professional tone. Kaiden, thank you for making time. Amara, his voice was concerned. Your message was unexpected. What has changed? I've left the company, I said simply. As of this morning, I am no longer employed there. The silence stretched for several seconds. I see. That is troubling news. We signed the agreement based substantially on your involvement, which is why I'm calling personally. Section 4.3 of our contract gives you options. I wanted you to understand the situation fully before you make any decisions. I appreciate your integrity, he said. What caused this separation? A restructuring decision, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. They've eliminated my position entirely. Another pause. The timing seems strategic. It does, doesn't it? Our legal team will review our options, he said. In the meantime, do you have recommendations for proceeding? That would be inappropriate now that I'm no longer with the company, I answered carefully. But as someone who values our professional relationship, I hope whatever path you choose protects your interests fully. Understood, His tone conveyed much more than the single word. "We will be in touch with your former employer today." When we ended the call, I sat watching a group of children playing nearby, their laughter carrying across the park. My phone began buzzing again. 6 new messages from Pierce, 3 from Margot, and 1 from my former deputy director, Elena. I opened only Elena's message. "Whatever you did, they're panicking. Emergency board call in progress. What's happening?" I smiled and typed back, "Climate change." The forecast suddenly shifted. Then I turned off my phone completely, took my box of belongings from the trunk, and found a quiet bench overlooking a small pond. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be, no crisis to manage, no late-night conference calls scheduled across time zones. I felt something unexpected: freedom. The company phone in my box chimed with message after message. I removed the battery and slid it into my purse. Whatever storm was brewing at headquarters would have to rage without me. As the afternoon sun warmed my face, I opened my personal laptop and began writing emails to 3 specific competitors who had tried recruiting me over the past 2 years. The subject line was simple: "Now available for discussions." Within 20 minutes, all 3 had responded with meeting requests. My personal phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "Amara Lockwood," a deep voice said. "My name is Jackson Wade. I'm the CEO of Summit Sensor Systems. I understand you might be looking for new opportunities, and I believe we should talk immediately." I hadn't contacted Summit. They were the industry leader, 3 times larger than my former employer. "How did you hear I was available?" I asked. "Let's just say news travels fast when someone with your track record suddenly enters the market. I've followed your international expansion work for years. Can you meet tomorrow?" The wheels of my revenge were turning faster than I'd anticipated. My former company had underestimated 2 critical factors: my network within the industry and how quickly good talent gets noticed when suddenly available. "Tomorrow works perfectly," I replied. "I just happened to have an opening in my schedule." The meeting with Jackson Wade took place at Summit's downtown office the following morning. Unlike the sterile minimalism of my former workplace, Summit's headquarters featured warm wood accents and glass walls that showcased teams collaborating rather than hiding them away. Jackson greeted me personally in the lobby. In his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he projected thoughtful competence rather than aggressive ambition. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," he said, leading me to a light-filled conference room overlooking the city. "I've followed your international expansion work for years. I'm curious how you heard I was available so quickly," I said, as we sat. He smiled. "The industrial sensor world is smaller than people think. Kaiden Tan called me yesterday. My surprise must have shown. We've known each other for 15 years, Jackson explained. When he mentioned what happened with your contract clause and departure, I immediately saw an opportunity. He leaned forward. "Tell me, what really happened?" For the next hour, I gave Jackson the unvarnished truth about my termination and the contract modification. He listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. "What you did wasn't revenge," he said when I finished. "It was self-preservation. They created this situation, not you." "Maybe a little of both," I admitted. He nodded. "Fair enough. Here's my proposition. I want you to head our entire Asia-Pacific division. Double your previous salary, equity options, and complete authority over regional strategy." He slid a document across the table, "including the freedom to approach all 5 distributors your former company was courting." I stared at the offer letter with its remarkable compensation package. Why? Two reasons. First, you've proven you understand Asian business culture when most American executives don't. Second, you've demonstrated loyalty, to yourself certainly, but also to your business partners like Kaiden. You called him personally, rather than leaving him to discover your departure through channels. That integrity is rare and valuable. And the fact that hiring me would damage a competitor? Jackson laughed. "That's just a bonus. Though I should mention, we've been watching your former company since Pierce took over. Their cost-cutting strategy worried us. It's unsustainable in relationship-based markets." I reviewed the offer letter carefully. I'd need 2 weeks before starting. Personal time. "Absolutely." He handed me a pen. "Welcome to Summit, Amara." I signed the letter, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. This wasn't just a job, It was vindication. Over the next 72 hours, the situation at my former company deteriorated rapidly. Elena kept me updated through discreet text messages. Day 1. Board called emergency meeting. Margot tried blaming you for unauthorized contract changes. Legal shut her down, said you had signing authority. Asian partners all invoking review clause. Day 2. Pierce sent executive team to Singapore. Distributors refusing meetings. Stock dropped 8% when analysts heard about implementation challenges in Asian markets. Day 3. They're offering you your job back with promotion and 40% raise. Should I give them your number? I replied to the last message. No need. I've accepted another position. Shortly after, Pierce himself called my personal number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was diplomatically desperate. Amara, clearly there's been a misunderstanding about your value to the company. The board has authorized me to create a new position, Executive Vice President of Global Markets, reporting directly to me with compensation adjusted accordingly. Please call to discuss. I deleted the message without responding. Meanwhile, I spent my 2 weeks of freedom preparing for my new role. I rented a vacation cabin by a lake, bringing only books about Asian business culture and a notebook. No calls, no emails, no corporate emergencies, just preparation and reflection. On my 3rd day there, Kaiden called. Your former company sent quite a delegation, he said, amusement in his voice. Their new VP tried explaining their enhanced implementation procedure for 2 hours, very detailed PowerPoints. And your response? I asked. I explained that without the relationship architect present, we must reconsider all terms as the contract allows. They offered substantial price concessions. Did that change your position? Amara, he said gently. You understand that business here is built on trust and relationship. Price adjustments cannot replace that foundation. I understand completely, I replied. I heard you've joined Summit. Jackson is a good man who values long-term partnerships. That's why I accepted his offer. Excellent. Perhaps in a month, when you're settled, Summit might be interested in discussing distribution opportunities in Asian markets. I smiled. I believe we would be very interested. By the time I started at Summit, my former company's situation had become a business school case study in how not to handle international expansion. All 5 Asian distributors had formally withdrawn from negotiations. The stock had fallen 22%, as analysts downgraded projections based on failed expansion plans. The Monday morning, I walked into Summit as their new Asia-Pacific director. A company-wide email introduced me to all employees, highlighting my exceptional track record in building sustainable international partnerships. My inbox filled with welcome messages from team members eager to work together. My first official act was scheduling calls with all 5 Asian distributors. By week's end, 3 had agreed to preliminary meetings with Summit. By month's end, we had signed 2 to exclusive distribution agreements with terms more favorable than what they'd nearly accepted from my former company. Kaiden's company signed with us 6 weeks later, after thorough discussions and relationship building with my new team. The press release announcing our partnership caused my former company's stock to drop another 15% in a single day. 3 months after my termination, the business news reported major leadership changes at my former company. The board had removed Pierce as CEO, citing strategic missteps in international markets. Margot resigned the same day. The company announced a return to core markets strategy, corporate speak for retreating from their failed expansion plans. I took no joy in individual suffering, but I felt vindicated watching the consequences of their decisions unfold. They had discarded me as unnecessary while I was creating tremendous value. The market simply corrected their misperception. 6 months into my role at Summit, our Asian division reported first quarter results 34% above projections. Jackson invited me to present personally to the board. As I concluded my presentation about our expansion success, the board chair asked about our former competitor. They're struggling to regain momentum, I said diplomatically. Their mistake was viewing international expansion as a transaction rather than a relationship. In Asian markets especially, trust and continuity matter more than quarterly numbers. A lesson we won't forget, Jackson added, nodding toward me. Later that evening, as I left the office after the board dinner, I received a text from Elena. Got hired at Summit today, starting in the marketing division next week. Can't wait to work with you again. I smiled. thinking about how differently things might have turned out had my former company valued relationships with their international partners, with their employees, with me. Their failure wasn't that they let me go. It was that they never understood what I was building for them. The next morning, a business journal published an interview with me about Summit's successful Asian strategy. The reporter asked if I harbored resentment toward my previous employer. Not at all, I answered truthfully. Everything worked out exactly as it should have. I believe people and companies eventually find their appropriate level, sometimes through growth, sometimes through correction. I'm exactly where I belong now. The article included a small data sidebar. Summit's stock had increased 27% since my hiring, while my former companies had fallen 53% over the same period, with analyst reports questioning their long-term viability. 1 year to the day after receiving that 3 a.m. termination text in Singapore, I stood at a Summit celebration, watching as we announced the opening of our new Asian headquarters, located, fittingly, in Singapore. As the ceremonial ribbon was cut, I caught Kaiden's eye across the room. He raised his champagne glass slightly in acknowledgement. I returned the gesture, quietly celebrating not just our success, but the power of patience. I hadn't needed to engineer an elaborate revenge scheme. I simply had to add one truthful clause to a contract, step aside, and let natural consequences unfold. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't what you do to others. It's what you build for yourself, while they self-destruct without you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe for more tales of workplace justice and professional comebacks. Drop a comment sharing your own experience with workplace undervaluation or corporate short-sightedness. I read every comment and find strength in our shared experiences. Until next time, remember that your true value isn't determined by those who discard you, but by what you create after they do.